The Nebbia by Mon Quattro is the world's most advanced showerhead. It only uses 50% as much water, but with a super high pressure spray. Click the link below and use the code PACMAN for 10% off all Nebbia products. Welcome, everybody. It is a major 24 hours of news. We have all sorts of different things going on economically, including what's going on in the stock market, the expected Fed announcement today about interest rates, which a lot of different people are watching for different reasons, be it geopolitically or economically or financially or whatever the case may be. We're also going to be talking about foreign policy and geopolitics today, and just a lot going on. So to start with, really major statement yesterday from the Department of Justice. There's been this question for months now, which, quite frankly, to put it coarsely, the question is like, what the hell is the DOJ doing? Are they going to investigate any of the dozen different things that they could investigate related to what Republicans and the Trump campaign did and tried around the 2020 election? What is Merrick Garland doing? Now, the answer on most of those things is still no, they're not investigating. But a pretty major piece of news yesterday, an admission from the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, who said there is an active investigation into one element of the Trump coup plot, which is the fraudulent Republican electors. Now, I'm trying to think, should I play the clip first or should I explain what that? Let's play the clip first, where she acknowledges that there is an investigation going on. Then I'll remind you, there's so many aspects to the 2020 Trump coup attempt that I'll explain which one she's referring to.
On the issue you raised in terms of fraudulent elector certifications has been reported. We've received those referrals. Our prosecutors are looking at those, and I can't say anything more on ongoing investigations. But more broadly, look, the Attorney General has been very clear. We are going to follow the facts and the law wherever they lead to address conduct of any kind and at any level that is part of an assault on our democracy.
So at any level is, of course, code for up to and including the president. That's good to see. But specifically, she says there is an active investigation going on into the elector scam. Now, let me remind you, we have such a... In many countries, if we said the thing they tried with the election is being investigated, it would be one thing. It would be like, okay, they tried messing with absentee ballots, or they tried manipulating voting machines, or they lied to people about what the voting hour, like there would be, we would know what it is. With the Trump attempt in 2020, it's 5 or 6 different things. And the one that Lisa Monaco is referring to is the idea of sending an alternate fraudulent set of electors to cast votes within certain states for Trump instead of Biden. So I'll remind you of one state where they did it. The idea was this: Arizona. Joe Biden won Arizona. Not controversial to say that in the world of sanity, reason, empiricism, and logic. Joe Biden won Arizona. Republicans fixated on Arizona as one of the states where they said Trump actually won. Now, on January 6th, 2021, as we now all know, those electors, those votes were formally accepted in Washington, D.C. Some of them carried over into January 7th because of the riots. The idea that they had was sign up, create a document that says, here are the electors from Arizona, and they would be Republican electors, even though Joe Biden won. Send them to be the ones to say Arizona casts its electoral votes for Donald Trump, with the idea that Mike Pence would be the one to say, due to the dispute and fraud and whatever in Arizona, we are accepting these Republican electors instead of these Democratic electors. It was an insane long shot. And of course, it didn't happen. And Mike Pence didn't participate. That's the scam. And it looks like Rudy Giuliani ran that and that they were trying it in 7 or so states. That is what Lisa Monaco says is under investigation. So that's a good thing. It's a very big deal. And we will continue to follow it, of course. One of the things that is unfortunately missing right now in the sort of national discussion around almost every issue in media, but in particular around some of the COVID disinformation, is just like simple gut check questions. What do I mean by that? What am I talking about? Well, all the talk about religious exemptions to the COVID vaccine. All right, well, so some states allow religious exemptions, some don't. Some organizations allow religious exemptions, some don't. A basic question that you would think is like the first question you would ever ask when someone says, I object on religious grounds to the vaccine, would be, oh, what is your religion? What is the objection? And what other vaccines does it apply to? Right? When someone says, well, my religion is in conflict with the COVID vaccine. Oh, okay. Well, where does it say that? And does it also object to the MMR vaccine? Does it also object to the Hep B vaccine? What is the objection? Tucker Carlson yesterday hosted fighter pilot Lieutenant Colonel Scott Duncan, who explains, I am battling the military for a religious exemption from having to get the COVID vaccine. All right, well, let's take a listen to what he had to say and keep those questions I mentioned in mind.
Well, here's one of the sadder stories. Wish we did more of these. Scott Duncan is a fighter pilot. He's Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Marine Corps. He has filed a religious exemption to the military's vaccine mandate. It has not been approved. Right now it's on appeal. So far, the U.S. military has issued just 2 religious exemptions total. If Mr. Duncan's appeal does not succeed, he will be discharged from the military. The military will likely lose hundreds of experienced pilots due to this mandate. Lieutenant Colonel Scott Duncan joins us tonight. Colonel, thanks so much for coming on. And I think of the experienced pilots that the U.S. military, the Marine Corps, this country stands to lose. You've got to be, in the top quartile for experience. I think you've flown over 300 combat missions, over 200 carrier landings. You got to kind of wonder who at the military is prioritizing a vaccine over that kind of experience defending the country. But what's your conclusion?
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity to join you tonight.
Hard hitting,
specifically to be able to convey our personal experiences and just understand that as an active duty service member, these views are not held by the United States Marine Corps or the Department of Defense. But we do believe that, yes, we have a reasonable argument. We've asked our leadership immediately, as well as our congressional leadership, to inquire as to really the cost-benefit analysis of losing several hundred very qualified aviators. Okay. The average time and grade for those aviators is 14 years. And also to just consider the second and third order effects and consequences of what they have to offer. I'm not unique in my situation. There are many incredibly qualified individuals with a tremendous amount of experience, and we believe that that could be a detriment to national defense in the event we separate that many aviators.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a lot more flying corporate or for the airlines than you're making now, you and all the rest of these guys. So you got to think you're doing this for a reason, a noble reason. Let me ask you about the grounds of the exemption that you're requesting. It's a religious exemption.
Yes, sir.
Well, how would you characterize the problems that you have with the vaccine?
Well, the problems we had personally with the vaccine, and we understand there's some reasonable disagreements. We do disagree with the pedigree and the technology maturation over time. That's one issue. The other is just a conviction by the Holy Spirit, and I believe we are led in that fashion, and we do not have any peace about the vaccine itself.
So think about that. He says the technology pedigree and so what he said there is complete mushmouth nonsense, but it could also apply to a whole bunch of other vaccines that he clearly accepted because he's in the military, and the military is one of the most vaccinated groups of people in the United States. Adam Kinzinger, the Republican congressman, tweeted about this, and he said, I'm having a hard time squaring how you can be religiously opposed to a COVID vaccine, but took the anthrax, smallpox, flu, typhoid, yellow fever, MMR, etc. to join and remain in, and that not have violated your religion. This is a very important point. We have to be able to say, Lieutenant Colonel, what you just said doesn't make any sense. First, where in your religious texts does it say that this vaccine is not okay? And how would it not apply to the list of vaccines everybody in the military gets at basic training? Adenovirus, We have the list up on the screen from Newsweek. Hep A, Hep B, flu, MMR, meningococcal, poliovirus, tetanus, diphtheria, varicella. And then depending on your particular occupation, anthrax, Haemophilus influenza type B, Japanese encephalitis, pneumococcal, rabies, small. Okay, I could go on. Explain exactly what this means, because the truth is, and I'm not being facetious here, if there is a real basis here, and I know that by real, we're talking about religious texts which are only relevant to those who follow that religion, why would an atheist or a Buddhist consider what the Catholic religious texts say? That they wouldn't. And I understand that this is all self-professed stuff. But if you're going to profess it, at least show me where the texts say it's a no on COVID, but it's a yes on these 10 other vaccines. It's not being asked. And even Tucker, when he says, explain to me the genesis of this objection, he says, well, it's the pedigree and the technology. And dude, that doesn't mean anything. And we should be able to say, and I know that these are it's considered offensive sometimes to ask these questions because it's their religion. But if they are imposing religion onto a civil system, then it should be allowed to ask obvious questions like, all right, explain it to me. What's the passage, or give me some verse, or explain it to me so that then I can understand what it is that you're saying. And of course, it doesn't make any sense. This guy's got 10, 15 vaccines, clearly, because he's been in the military. But this one violates his religion. We shouldn't allow it just because someone says it's my religion. We should actually get the information. If you disagree with me, let me know. You can find me on Twitter at @dpacman. We're going to take a very quick break and be right back. One of our sponsors is Nebbia, who's introducing their newest shower head, the Nebbia by Mon Quattro. It was designed by former NASA engineers who spent years researching how to save water. Quattro is the world's best high-pressure water-saving shower head, starting at just $119. And Quattro uses 40 to 50% less water than traditional shower heads, helping the planet, helping your wallet, still giving you the high-pressure water stream you love. With 4 different spray modes, literally takes 1 to 2 minutes to install. Easy as screwing in a light bulb. I love it. I have the rain shower version. I've been using Nebbia shower heads for a while now. I love saving the water, and I love the high pressure spray. It's really the best of both worlds. Nebbia, the maker of Quattro, also offers sustainable bathroom accessories. I have the soft gray bath mat and the Nebbia double shelf. The Quattro shower head is just $119, but Nebbia is giving you 10% off when you go to nebbia.com/Pacman and use the promo code Pacman. The link is underneath this video. The David Pacman Show is funded primarily by listeners of the podcast, viewers on YouTube, people who listen to the show on the radio or watch on Free Speech TV, who sign up for memberships on my website. That website is joinpacman.com. It's cheap, it's quick, it directly goes to support our daily show, and also gets you a ton of great perks, including the daily bonus show, commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show, which are made available 6 hours earlier for our members. No waiting until the clips get published or the podcast goes out. You get the show very, very early in the day. You can sign up at joinpacman.com. Last week, we talked to you about OAN being dropped by some cable networks, the extreme right-wing propaganda network OAN. It is not just OAN that some cable providers are dropping. Newsmax, the also right-wing crazy network to the right of Fox News, is being quietly dropped by a number of different cable providers. And this is getting less attention, but it's just as interesting. Next TV reporting, Newsmax quietly dropped by Atlantic Broadband, Cincinnati Bell, and other cable operators. Conservative channels' carriage issues emerge as rival OAN faces pay TV oblivion. And the article actually says, while the focus has been on One America News and its recent carriage struggles, Newsmax has also quietly lost distribution. Since December 31st, Newsmax has been pulled off the pay TV grids of cable operators, including Atlantic Broadband, Cincinnati Bell, South Carolina's Hargray Communications, and Central Pennsylvania's Blue Ridge Communications. These are just the cable systems we know about that have dropped Newsmax. Now, as is often the case, the article says it's unclear whether the carriage disruptions are part of an expiration of a master carriage deal signed in 2015, or if these issues are related to the politics of these channels. As OAN has with its upcoming ouster from DirecTV, New York-based Newsmax has attributed its recent blackout troubles to, quote, censorship of conservative voices. Newsmax said, despite our high ratings with personalities like Greg Kelly, Eric Bolling, Sean Spicer, Lindsay Keith, Dick Morris, Alan Dershowitz, and more. That's funny. It's clear Blue Ridge doesn't like Newsmax's point of view. The cable operators framed the issue in standard carriage war terms. It is just business. You know, this is actually funny. I've mentioned this before. I actually am in touch with someone at sort of in a position of I guess to the extent that you can have power at Newsmax, sort of a powerful position at Newsmax. And this person is very reasonable politically. And I know that it's for sure to say it's just a job kind of diminishes the corrosive and destructive nature of these channels. But not everybody it's a product at the end of the day. It's a destructive product. It's sort of like saying, well, opioids are just a product. It's amoral. Well, no, opioids have destroyed the lives of a lot of people, and they've been incredibly effective for people in serious pain as well. And that doesn't, okay. So I'm not, either way, it has an effect. But Newsmax to me is more interesting than OAN, not because it's less crazy, although the content is marginally less crazy, but because from what I know, the OAN people really seem to be true believers in the insanity in a way that at least some of the people at Newsmax are not. Now, it doesn't seem to be particularly helping them with cable networks. And as a reminder, it is not censorship not to be on a cable network. I would love for my show to be on every cable network. It's not. I'm not being censored. There's just a lot of shows, and not every cable network is going to take my show. If Harvard doesn't want me to speak there, I'm not being censored. I just don't have a right to speak at Harvard, and people may or may not want to hear from me at Harvard. And even if some do and some don't, I don't have any right to show up and speak there. And I think this is where a lot of these right-wingers sort of deliberately or out of ignorance don't really understand what censorship actually means. But Newsmax struggling with cable networks, as is OAN, and we'll see what their cable carriage looks like as we get closer and closer to the November midterms. It actually could make a difference because they are some of the loudest voices amplifying Republican candidates in these upcoming elections, which now, they're 9 months away. We're 9 months from the midterm elections. Hey, this is super interesting. Many of you, I am sure, remember the things that Donald Trump said about people who plead the Fifth, right? Do you guys remember this?
Fifth Amendment. The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Right. Why would if you have nothing to hide, if you're innocent, you wouldn't invoke the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. However, we have now learned that both Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and Donald Trump's own son, Eric Trump, invoked their Fifth Amendment right hundreds of times during their testimony to the January 6th Trump riot committee. Report from Business Insider. Far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones pleaded the Fifth Amendment almost 100 times before the January 6th committee. What? I thought only guilty people did that. Alex Jones, a far-right conspiracy theorist and host of InfoWars, invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination almost 100 times while testifying Monday before the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. Jones made the revelation during his broadcast that evening, and his remarks were first reported by Politico. As you might recall, Jones spoke at the Stop the Steal rally headlined by Trump on January 6th. CNN reported Jones was intricately involved in planning the event. And the Wall Street Journal reported Jones helped secure a $300,000 donation for the rally's costs, and offered more than 50 grand of his own money to choose his speaking slot. Eric Trump also Eric Trump invoked Fifth Amendment about 500 times. Now, this is in a different probe. This is in the New York Attorney General probe article from a few days ago. Eric Trump invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 500 times. Can you imagine? When the Trump Organization EVP was deposed as part of a civil probe into the company's asset valuation. The second son answered only background questions under oath and cited his constitutional right to avoid incriminating himself in response to more than 500 questions over 6 hours. If you only need to look to Donald Trump to get an understanding of what it means when one invokes the Fifth Amendment. Remember?
Her staffers taking the Fifth Amendment. How about that? And her ringleaders getting immunity. Now, she has people taking the Fifth Amendment. 4 people plus the guy who illegally did the server. You know, he put it in the illegal server.
Uh-oh.
So there are 5 people taking the Fifth Amendment, like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Wow. Interesting question.
And then they read a whole list of charges. She's guilty on every one of them. And then what do they say? But that's okay. And yet other people.
Yeah. So you guys get the point. By Donald Trump's own perspective, by his own statement, pleading the Fifth is an indication of guilt. Now, I have to tell you, part of this is just the cartoony and hypocritical nature, right? They're pleading the Fifth and Trump says you're guilty. The other aspect to this is it actually is a really important constitutional reality in the United States that not speaking, your innocence cannot be used against you. And so the first part is the cartoonish hypocrisy where I'm sure if you said to Trump, sir, in 2017 or whenever you said pleading the Fifth means you're guilty, but your son pleaded the Fifth 500 times, he would say, well, no, but he's being railroaded in a witch hunt. So it would be different. That would be one piece. But the other thing is they claim to be all about the Constitution. They claim to be all about the Bill of Rights, due process, and all of these things. Suggesting that pleading the Fifth is an indication of guilt violates all of that. So as usual, their stated principle that they are the primary defenders of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and due process. And then they love this idea of if you plead the Fifth, you're guilty. Violates that as well. It shouldn't surprise us. Their principles are of no importance whatsoever once the principles are inconvenient to the point that they want to get across. All right, this is a very, very disturbing clip. I would encourage you, maybe get the kids out of the room before I play this clip. There is a guy named Alex Berenson. Alex Berenson has been consistently wrong about just about everything throughout the pandemic, including vaccines. Alex Berenson was invited onto the Tucker Carlson propaganda Fox News show last night, and Alex Berenson has now made the principled and defiant statement that the COVID vaccines should be pulled. Stop vaccinating everyone, says Alex Berenson. And Tucker just nods along. He nods along like his head is on some kind of swivel. You have to see this. This is extraordinarily dangerous. And remember, for context, this is business for Fox. Just about everybody at Fox is vaccinated. Fox has a much stricter vaccine policy than the one that Joe Biden attempted to put in place, which has been struck down by the Supreme Court. The Fox policy is even more strict. This is a business strategy for Fox News. Let's just jump right in.
We're at a very dangerous moment, Tucker. And, you know, I'm not exaggerating. I think this is probably the most important appearance I've had with you in the last 2 years. It is completely clear now that the vaccines don't really work at all against Omicron. In these highly vaccinated and highly boosted countries, rates of infection are incredibly high, and rates of serious disease and death are also rising. The Israelis are predicting that they're going to have more serious cases than they ever had at the peak last year. And the idea that we would solve this with another booster is just off the charts insane. I have not said this to you before because I'm pretty careful and I'm pretty careful with the data. But
That's not true.
these vaccines, these mRNA vaccines, the mRNA COVID vaccines need to be withdrawn from the market now. No one should get them.
Pull them.
No one should get boosted. No one should get double boosted. They are a dangerous and ineffective product at this point against Omicron. The spike that they make your body make that you then produce antibodies to is not the Omicron spike. And earlier today, Tony Fauci said, we're not going to give people monoclonal antibody products, because the first generation products, because they don't work against the Omicron spike. The same logic applies to these mRNA vaccines, and giving people boosters, even if in the very short term it knocks down infection rates, there's a boomerang effect, and that's what they're seeing in all these countries. We are at a dangerous moment, and these products need to be withdrawn.
Pull them all. Cancel the vaccines. Now, just about every claim Berenson makes is false, but consider how easily in just 80 seconds he's able to set so many fires, and consider then how difficult it is to put those fires out, particularly in the minds of the Fox audience, which is very receptive to this stuff, despite the fact that almost everybody at Fox News is fully vaccinated. Now, as a reminder, this clip aside, Berenson has been wrong about just about everything during the pandemic. He predicted the U.S. would not have 500,000 COVID deaths. We're at almost 900,000 already. He argued that cloth and surgical masks cannot protect you against the coronavirus at all. And of course, they do to varying degrees. There's countless peer-reviewed studies on this, including one called An Evidence Review of Face Masks Against COVID. That's in the journal PNAS, which I encourage you to look at. He's been wrong on everything. He blamed vaccines for causing spikes in severe illness, when in reality, the vaccines prevent severe illness. He blamed the vaccines for suppressing immune systems, which is a total misrepresentation of how the immune system works. He suggested countries like Israel suffered from rolling out vaccines early, even though deaths and hospitalizations in Israel among the vaccinated were so low in that initial period that he's talking about. So he's been wrong about everything. But now he makes these claims to Tucker last night. Vaccines don't work at all against Omicron. That's not true. We now have extensive data. The vaccines we currently have are much less effective at preventing infection from Omicron, but still very effective at preventing hospitalization and preventing death, which is the point of vaccines. He says, look at, or he doesn't say, but if you look at the rates right now of hospitalization and death stratified for vaccination status, it is not even close, with Omicron almost 100% of cases in the United States. He says there's more cases in Israel than at the peak last year. Well, there's more cases in most places right now than at their previous peaks because Omicron is so contagious, but there's still a dramatically lower death rate, up to 90% lower. And that lower death rate is particularly in the vaccinated. The data are extraordinarily clear. He says another booster won't solve this. Well, increasingly people aren't saying take endless boosters of the same vaccine. In a couple months, there will be an Omicron calibrated vaccine. He says no one should get a vaccine at all. The evidence is clear. You should get vaccinated to lower your chance of serious illness, lower your chance of ending up in the hospital, and lower your chance of ending up dead. And then he says this is a dangerous product against Omicron. There is no evidence that the vaccines are dangerous when used to fight Omicron. And even what that means is very squishy and imprecise language. This is a very dangerous guy. And Tucker has him on, and he just nods, and he just nods. And at this point, it's abundantly clear Tucker doesn't believe this stuff. It doesn't make what he's doing any less pernicious. In fact, you could argue it makes it more pernicious because he knows that what this guy's saying is untrue. It doesn't matter in the end because the decision is still being made to put it on the air. But it's extraordinarily dangerous. None of it is based in evidence. And we'll have the clip. If you're just listening today, we'll have that clip of Alex Berenson on our Instagram, which you can find at David Pakman Show. You can also follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. I posted yesterday a very, very strange message, not exactly a love letter that I received from a viewer. You can find it on my Instagram at david.pakman. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com. So many of you wrote to me and said, David, you've got to check out this new interview that Jordan Peterson did with Joe Rogan. I don't know how many of you have been following, but Jordan Peterson, I don't even know that I feel the need to completely characterize it, but he basically, due to medical, we could call them medical issues, addiction issues, he dropped off the public face of the earth for years, and then now he's back. And it might not shock you guys that in the context of the COVID pandemic, he's sort of on this, it's just the problem. The reason I'm struggling is the Peterson acolytes, no matter what you say, if it's even remotely critical, they will say you're not understanding him because you're not smart enough, so you're misstating what he stands for. He's not exactly been a fan of any kind of public health measures being required. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. He's sort of like in that contingent. He reappeared on the Joe Rogan program and has become almost a parody of himself. I mean, I'm just going to look at some clips here. And again, I know I'm stepping on a wasp's nest here because everybody's going to write in who loves this guy and say, David, you are so ignorant that you don't have the capacity to understand what he's saying. What he's saying does make sense, but I encourage you to prove that to me. Tell me that what he says here makes any sense other than being the exact type of nothing means anything postmodern nonsense that he claims to be against. Take a look at this.
Hard to sort out. The climate change one is a weird one. So
that's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. And that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's like
the types. People who are like, oh, here's the science. Those types bother him.
Something that bothers me about it, technically. It's like, well, climate is about everything. So, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
What do you mean?
Now, what's crazy about this is when people say climate is about everything, I mean, listen, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we say climate is about everything, what I think of is there's these meta issues in society, right? And those meta issues are our economic system, access to healthcare, media, and climate. And what I mean by that is if you care about abortion or you care about net neutrality or you care about whatever, if you are unable to even sustain yourself economically, it's hard to be an activist because you're like, where's my next meal going to come from? If you don't have access to healthcare, it's hard to be an activist for what matters to you, because you're sick and you don't have care. And climate is in that meta issue category, in that if we have systemic climate change that damages the planet and creates death from pollution and all these, flooding, etc., it's hard to be an activist for abortion when you're being forced to relocate because of rising sea level. So that's a completely reasonable way to say climate's about everything. But what Jordan Peterson is saying is nonsense. And people will say, I scroll down right now on YouTube, David, you're not understanding the brilliance of this man. All of these claims are indefeasible. Anytime it sounds like he makes no sense, you can say you just don't understand what he's saying. It makes perfect sense. Here's another clip where they talk about, I guess this is about race and how, like, when you say someone is white, their skin is not literally white. And when you say someone is black, their skin is not literally black. It's like, I remember this conversation in 5th grade. In 5th grade, we would say, I remember a conversation with the teacher. I'm not really white. My skin is like tan. And 2 black kids in the class would say, I'm not really black. My skin is brown. And we were told that we're not literally, guys, this is 2 grown men doing this.
Depending on who you ask, either you're a voice of reason and rationality and personal responsibility, or you're a voice of intolerance and bigotry and anger and hateful
sexual oppression.
What did
prejudice,
Eric Dyson call you? A mean angry white man.
And a mean angry white man. Yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah.
You're not mean at all.
Yeah.
That's what's dumb about that statement. You're not mean at all.
I am white. Actually, that's a lie too. I'm kind of tan, and he was actually not black.
If you're tan,
he was
what
sort
the
of
fuck
brown.
am I? Because I'm darker than you.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. But neither of us are white.
Well, I'm Italian.
And
mostly.
he was brown, not black.
Well, isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's really weird.
The black and white thing is so strange because
like
the shades are so
tan and brown.
There's such a spectrum of shades of people.
I had this conversation when I was 10 with our teacher. I remember people saying to the teacher, "Can you explain why we're called white?" And we figured this out in 5th grade, guys.
Unless you're talking to someone who is like 100% African from the darkest place where they're not wearing any clothes all day and they've developed all that melanin to protect themselves from the sun. Even the term black is weird.
You're not really black unless you aren't wearing clothes all day. This is crazy, guys. There are people who worship this. Decode this one. And there's people saying this is brilliant. Here's Peterson talking about music theory. And I mean, you have to see, it seems like a parody.
So let's think about what music is.
Yes.
First of all, it's a pattern. So non-patterned music is noise. It's a pattern. But then it isn't one pattern. It's multiple patterns layered on top of one another in a harmonious manner, and in a manner that indicates, in some sense, communication between all the patterned layers, because they have to go together. And so, what's the world? Well, the world's made of objects. It's like, no, it's not. It's made of patterns. So music is just like the world, because the world's made of patterns. And then music has layered patterns that are all moving together in a harmonious manner.
The thing that is frustrating to me about this is that I'm not saying Jordan Peterson's a dumb guy, but there's this thing that happens where it's very common that with lots of public intellectuals, the way in which they speak is not particularly accessible to lots of people. And it starts to be sort of like, well, I believe that they're really brilliant. So therefore, the fact that I don't really get this is probably my deficit. And I'm sure that everything they're saying is great. This is an example of where, like, some of the stuff he's saying is kind of uncontroversial, but it's all being tied together in what truly is a nonsense word salad. And it doesn't mean that there's nothing here of substance, but this is not exactly, the reaction that this clip is getting, as if this is some incredible, brilliant thing. It's really not, and it has to be okay for us to say that. These are very strange rantings.
And so what do you do when you hear that, especially if it's got a beat? Well, then you move your body, and you want to, right? The music calls to you to move your body. So now you're moving your body in sync with the patterned layers of the world. Well, that's meaning. And then there's more to it. So that's so cool. Music is an analog of the structure of existence itself. And it calls to you to take part in that. And then, so maybe you dance by yourself, or maybe even better, you dance with someone else. And so then you both bring your bodies into.
Man, I mean, I just don't. Here's one about protected classes.
I think people are going after.
This is part of the culture war stuff where now you can't joke anymore.
Comedy for a different thing today, because they're going after comedy for a literal representation of what the words mean if you put them in print. And that's nonsense.
Yeah,
but that's not what a comedian is doing.
Well, they're doing that. They're doing that because there are some things they believe that can't be made fun of.
Yeah, but really what they're doing is just looking for targets. They're playing a game. The rules of the game have been established. Comedy violates the rules of the game.
Yeah, what are the rules?
Because comedy take those things. Well, there's a lot of things you can't joke about.
Mm-hmm.
You can't joke
Sacred
about
things.
Yeah, there's protected classes now. We all know what they are. We don't even have to bring them up. Whether it's trans people, gay people, people of color.
And again, this is like the perfect way to make it seem like, oh, liberals just don't want anybody to have fun. You can't have fun anymore. It's just that they don't want any fun. Of course, the truth about comedy and joking about things that are sometimes seen as sacred, the truth is context and intent matters when we make jokes about Jews or blacks or gays or whatever. And of course you can find people who would say you can never make any joke ever at the expense of these 10 groups. That's a very small portion of people. And leftists like me and others understand context and understand considering intent. And these can be blurry areas, but to make it seem as though that it's just comedy, you can't do comedy anymore. It's just not allowed if you have these things. It's just not true. All right, here's the last one. And here's Jordan Peterson explaining the book, the Bible, versus the idea, the Bible. I know.
So I just walked through the Museum of the Bible in Washington. That was very cool. It's a very cool museum.
So the structure, that's what the Bible
that's what
provides.
I figured out. I just figured this out this week. So it was a cool thing to walk through because it's chronological. They have one floor, which is the history of the Bible.
Okay.
But it's not exactly that. It's really what it is the history of the book. Now, in many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because...
Okay, so wait a second. The floor is about the history of the Bible, but it's not about the history of the Bible. It's about the history of the book. And the first book was the Bible. Okay.
At one point, there was only one book.
Right.
Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And
now, are we saying literally one copy or there was one tome?
Well, literally, there was only one book.
Okay.
And that book was the Bible. And then before it was the Bible, it was it was scrolls and it was...
Wait, so the book that was the Bible existed before it was a book, or it existed before it was the Bible?
Writings on papyrus, but we were starting to aggregate written text together, and it went through all sorts of technological transformations, and then it became books that everybody could buy. The book everybody could buy, and the first one of those was the Bible.
Wait, so how many books are there now?
It became all sorts of books that everybody could buy. But all those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book. And that book itself, the Bible isn't a book, it's a library.
Oh, it's not a book at all. Guys, okay, bring it on, guys. Come tell me I don't understand the genius of that. Come tell, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, let's hit a couple of other things here as we continue with today's show. We continue to wonder about what the 2024 presidential election is going to look like, and a big part of that is Joe Biden going to run for re-election? We don't have an answer to that question yet. Another part of it is Donald Trump going to run for the Republican primary? And we don't have an answer to that yet either. There is a new poll out which says that as of right now, that's basically a dead heat race, Biden versus Trump. If that were to be it, I believe it was about 45 for each. A tie, statistically a tie within the margin of error. And we can, of course, raise questions about how valuable is a poll. I guess we are 2 years and 9 months, so 33 months from that election. It's probably not particularly valuable, other than to tell us that as of right now, there is still great appetite from tens of millions of people in this country for Donald Trump to be president again. As I've said before, I believe that a big factor in whether Trump will or won't run again is Trump's health in 2023 and 2024. He's not a particularly healthy guy. He's not a particularly young guy. And it's a statistical reality that his health in 2024 may not lend itself to a presidential campaign. I don't know. And I'm not wishing him harm. I'm just saying it's aside from will he believe he can win? Will he be distracted with something else? Whatever. The health issue is a real question, and I'm not saying it's not a real question for Joe Biden either. That being said, we are starting to see signs of interest from Donald Trump in running in 2024. One of those signs of interest is that almost at the turn of the new year, Trump has already restarted rallies, doing a rally in Florence, Arizona on January 15th. He'll be doing a rally in Conroe, Texas, where we will have a correspondent, by the way, this Saturday, January 29th. So he seems very interested in being involved and continuing to be sort of a kingmaker in the context of the midterms in order to then justify running in 2024. Here's another just little hint. This is Donald Trump golfing, which he does a lot now. And some kind of sycophant who's filming him teeing off refers to him as the 45th president of the United States. And then Donald Trump says the 45th and the 47th. Just another little sign that indeed he may be planning on running. Take a look.
You're so lucky to be one up.
Lucky. We'll be lucky if we're up. We got it.
First on G. 45th president of the United States.
45th and 47th.
47th.
Oh.
Yes.
I love that.
Mr. Donald Trump.
Ooh.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm sure everybody tells him how great his tee shot is, right? No matter how good it is. Let's see.
Beautiful. What an easy game. I think it's pretty boring to be middle all the time.
You want to keep it low. That wind's strong.
Yes, exactly. All right. So, I don't know how much we need to or should read into that, but needless to say, it's just another little sign, another small indicator that indeed Donald Trump may be planning to run in 2024. And the scariest part is, as of right now, if the election were held today, he might actually win. Okay. Tucker Carlson is going full anti-Semitic coddling with a very special about how dangerous 91-year-old Holocaust survivor George Soros is to the country and to the world. They're not even pretending anymore, okay? Tucker Carlson this is a Tucker Carlson original called Hungary versus Soros, The Fight for Civilization. This will be streaming today. The promo image, which we have on screen, has an ominous looking half face shot of George Soros, who is really, they are pointing and fingering public enemy number one, 91-year-old Holocaust survivor who donates to liberal causes, George Soros. Now, as many of you know, many of you might not understand what does that mean? What do you mean? It's not by definition anti-Semitic, and you're absolutely right. But this is one of the oldest tropes now, which is the conspiracy of wealthy Jewish individuals to take control of society, often to make it communist or socialist, which is crazy because George Soros is like the ultimate capitalist. To look at how he's made his money. And very, very often, if you start following anti-vax, if you start following shadow government, if you start any of these conspiracy theories, you follow them, there, you'll find that the Jews are actually what underlies this in many different cases. So here's Tucker Carlson, I guess, being interviewed by other Fox people about Soros and the special.
I mean, it's just a lie. Anyone who says that is either lying or doesn't know anything.
GG. So I'm going to ask a super naive question because that's what I do. I'm, like everybody here, infuriated by the funding of these progressive DAs by these Soros, I guess it's Open Society or whatever it's called. So I go and I look him up and I go, okay, he actually sounds like in the 80s. I remember in the 80s how beloved he was because he helped with the fall of the USSR, if my memory is correct, and I remember reading about it in National Review and the American Spectator, and I'm reading about his past, and I go, his dad was in Siberia, in a Siberian prison. He escaped from Nazi Germany. He helped with the fall of USSR. Is he aware that his money is being used to destroy America? Is this just something where he's not paying attention to it because he's in his 90s? I told you it was a naive question.
Well, I wouldn't just say America. I would say the West.
Right.
Western civilization.
All of George Soros at 91 is hell-bent on the destruction of Western civilization.
Is his target. And I know a lot of people who know Soros personally, and some people who've done business with him. Mm-hmm. Every single person knows him, says this is one of the smartest, most interesting people in the world, and I believe that, and I'm impressed by it. Mm-hmm. But his program for the past 15 years at least has been to make the societies he focuses on more dangerous, dirtier, less democratic, more disorganized, more at war with themselves, less cohesive. In other words, it's a program of destruction aimed at the West. Now, I don't know what his motive is. I'm certainly not going to guess. People are complicated. He clearly is. But that's what that program is. So let's not pretend it's a political program. It's not. Increasing the number of murders in a country, what is that? It's an attack on the country. And that's what he's doing.
Dana? And of course, these claims are absurd. The idea that George Soros is going out there saying, let's see how we can get more murders going on. I mean, it's quite literally the caricature of the clever, rich Jewish guy behind the scenes figuring out how to make everything. And it's like, how is that even better for him? And I'm sure they have some way. I'm sure they have some way to explain how increasing the number of murders is somehow good for Soros's long game. I mean, he's 91, but he has some long game through which increasing murders is going to be good for him. They're not even pretending anymore, guys. And so that's the special that Fox News is going to be running. We have a voicemail number, and that number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here is a voicemail from someone who caught the show on our broadcast affiliate, Free Speech TV. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not. Our show is on nightly on satellite television. That's DirecTV and Dish Network. The channel is called Free Speech TV. On DirecTV, I believe it's channel 348. I hope they haven't changed the channel lineup. I think it's 348. On Dish Network, it's channel, again, I hope it hasn't changed, 9415. Here is a viewer who caught us on Free Speech TV, and he doesn't believe the name Free Speech TV for the channel is appropriate. Take a listen to this. Buckle in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got the right line. I've got a message for you that I'm still working on. I'm writing off
This is a draft message. Bear that in mind.
a lot of information down about your network and why you call yourself Free Speech TV. I don't understand that. You people sound like a bunch of socialist communist idiots.
Is that it? Still on the phone. Background noise. Sir, please hang up. Okay. This continues to be a funny thing. I am criticized daily, both because, one, we have sponsors, and this is how, I fund my life and how my employees are paid, the fact that the show makes money. So I'm told the show is too capitalist. It's too capitalist a show because it's financially sustainable. And this is a socialist or communist show. Now, of course, anyone who watches would know really the perspective of this program is social democracy, which is a regulated form of capitalism. We allow markets to direct resources within many areas, but we say in certain areas we should be out of the market. Healthcare, education. Okay, you guys get it. You guys get it. But it really is fascinating to daily be criticized for being too capitalist of a show and too communistic of a show. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. We have such a great bonus show for you today. Nancy Pelosi is running for re-election. And there are people writing in saying, David, she's in her 80s. That's it. It's time to go. We need a younger Speaker of the House or whatever the case may be. I have some people emailing me saying, David, Nancy Pelosi has an opponent. but her opponent has been accused of sexual harassment. So I'm mixed. Like, should I support or not? I'm not really sure. A lot of questions when it comes to the Nancy Pelosi reelection, which we will be talking about on the bonus show. Secondly, the FDA has stopped the use of a particular monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID because it doesn't seem effective against Omicron. And Florida is pushing back, saying, now we want to use it anyway. And Ron DeSantis sort of doesn't seem to understand how simple math works in his defense of that type of monoclonal antibody. We will talk about that. And we do have Olympics coming to China. And ahead of the Olympics, there are some abrupt and very harsh lockdowns looming in Beijing, which we will discuss on today's bonus show. Should there even be Olympics going on? We will talk about all of it on today's bonus show. Get instant access by becoming a member at joinpacman.com. And this Saturday, we will have a correspondent doing interviews of Trumpists live at the Trump rally in Conroe, Texas. I hope you will join me at 6 p. East, 3 p. West on YouTube. Now I'm trying to on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. We will be live in Conroe, Texas with a correspondent and then have the Trump rally and the entire thing. But for today, make sure you sign up at joinpacman.com and get instant access to today's bonus show. I will see you then. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. The Nebbia by Mon Quattro is the world's most advanced shower head. It only uses 50% as much water, but with a super high pressure spray. Click the link below and use the code PACMAN for 10% off all Nebbia products.